to Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's a rainy Sunday, but I'm off today once again. I worked 3 days in a row, and now I'm off again for surprisingly 4 days in a row. I mean, I definitely have mixed feelings about that, my schedule, because, I love, being part-time, and I will stick to it for as long as I can do it without, without the expectations of feeling like I have to have to go to part-time. Full-time. I know eventually I probably will get to the point where I'll need to, but I'm enjoying this part-time schedule because then I don't work every day a week. Like, I get several days off. But then I feel guilty because days off, you're not making money when you're not working. But anyway, and I keep thinking, maybe in the beginning when I first started this job was when I had those several days off in a row. I was like, or any days off, I was like, wait, shouldn't I be working? I've been feeling like it, I'm anxious about it, and I'm worried that work's gonna call me and say, oh, can you come in or anything. I still get that way, but not as bad anymore. So I'm taking full advantage and focusing, gonna get a lot of reading done today. I will also talk about Shameless because I'm still watching it. I'm on season 7 right now, and there's 11 seasons, so I think that means like 4 more seasons to go. I think 5 or 4 more seasons to go. Fortunately, my parents will be done before me. Unfortunately. But I will talk more about that later. So let's talk about the reading. So I did start picking up some shorter novels too, because like I tried to do March of the Mammoths, and I did read All the Light That Falls, and that's definitely a mammoth length, or close to it possibly. But I just keep thinking about all the books. Like, again, I'm not trying to, be like, oh, I have to read all the books because, I have to count how many books I've read. It's more that I'm just feeling like, oh, these books are sitting there and I could read them, that I could read them when they're, especially, like, they're not going to take as long for me to read. And I'm like, oh, I should read those instead of spending all this time on this one book. I should explore those books so I can decide what, consume those stories and then decide if I, truly enjoyed reading that book or not. I hope that, again, I always hope it makes sense what I'm saying because, I don't want people to think that I'm so obsessed with quantity over quality because I always pick books that I want to read. I'm not just picking these books to be like, oh, I have to read that book. Because it's, and I have to read that book and that book and that book. It's not about having to read. It's about I want to read these books. I bought them and they've been sitting on my shelf. I need to finally read them. Like that. Like, there are books that will be sitting on my shelf for a year or two or even longer than that. I'm like, I haven't read them, so let me pick those up first. So the first book I read that I bought, I don't know if I bought in 2023 or 2022, but I remember I bought it from Walmart. Because, they have their small little book section, and it's mostly like, bestsellers, the books that, you could buy at like an airport or something, and that it's not that they're not good, it's just they're common that a lot of people love them. Well, for just reading to, something to read quickly. Actually, now I think I didn't get it at Walmart. I think this was the book I got this might have been the book that I bought when we went to, the airport. It was an airport book. That was, when our trip to London. And I bought it, and, there was a bookstore in that airport. So I immediately, and I was struggling to find a book, and then I spotted that one. It's one that I've been wanting to read. So that might have been that book. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I finally read it. And that's The Cloisters by Caroline Hay. Not Caroline. What made me think of Caroline? Katie Hayes. And I didn't realize it was a debut, actually. It was her first book. And I definitely have mixed feelings. On the one, I think it was a pretty good book, not a terrible book. But I feel like there were missed opportunities. And I think, like, as other reviewers have said, The Secret History did it better. It's a dark academia book. And I feel like it could have, like, there was an aspect of the book that was implied in the description of the book on the back that it was going to explore the certain thing, and it doesn't explore it that much. I mean, it's in there, and it's, a catalyst, but it doesn't play as much of a role as I thought it would be. It was more focused on the relationship dynamics between the main character and this group of people that she joins with. It's more about their relationship. Which kind of, The Secret History tackled this dynamic, but you knew that was going to be the main thing in that story. And, and the same with We Were Villains. That was the main focus, was the relationship between the characters. But I was expecting them more to talk about what was implied, the subject that they were studying. I thought that was going to be I even assumed there was going to be more, not just more focused on that, but there was going to be some, maybe magical realism or something. And that was divination, like tarot cards, and I was just expecting, and it's not as strong as I thought it would be. It's not a bad book. It's nicely written, and it was kind of made me think of my little, and I've said last time I talked about this book that it made me think of how I always, there was a time when briefly I considered a career working in archives and at a museum and being a museum tour guide and everything. And the idea of doing all that research and discovering these secrets of the past and hanging out in these archives and finding these old documents or all these old objects and learning its history and just, being able to touch it as long as it doesn't fall apart on you and you don't contaminate it. Just that image, I think, is really cool. It did make me think of that image, and it was an immersive story to an extent, and the relationship dynamics were interesting, were intriguing. But I feel like it had a lot of missed opportunities. I mean, you don't have to be as long as a book like The Secret History to do that, to explore that kind of stuff. Like, If We Were Villains is a lot shorter than, it's like probably like half the length of The Secret History, and I think it does a brilliant job too. Some people even like it better. And now those are the only two dark academia books I've read, but there are other people who have, actually Catherine House, which I'm wondering if Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro would also count as dark academia. But I guess maybe not, because it doesn't really focus on academia necessarily. And does Catherine House count? I mean, someone did say it did, but I'm not sure. Anyway, but I haven't read any other ones since. So, but I know that people that have read a lot more dark academia than I have, and not 100% satisfied with this book, with The Cloisters. But then, maybe it's a good starting, if you're not familiar and you want to get into dark academia, maybe it's not a bad place to start, because then you wouldn't have any other dark academia to compare it to. So you could still enjoy it, because I don't think it's a bad book. I think it's pretty good. And if you're not familiar with other dark academia, then the stuff that's in there might not seem as boring to you. But yeah, so I read that one. That took me only like 2 or 3 days to read, because it's not a super long book. And then also I started reading this. So this was one of the books that I borrowed from the library originally, but I just wasn't feeling it at the time. Blasphemous, I know, but I said it was boring. But at the time, I was feeling the pressure to know that, I'm going to have to return the book, and there were other books, because we'll borrow 3 or 4 books from the library at the time. Because I couldn't decide. I was like, I'm not buying them, so I'm just borrowing them, so I can borrow up to 15 books. but or at least as much as I can carry. So I was, I think I was probably rushing through it and not taking the time with this because there were other books I wanted to read and I knew I would have to return those books. So I was prioritizing those books and I just wasn't feeling it at the time. And maybe even the fact that I was in my 20s also might have played a part. But I mean this now, A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. And this is a book about a young woman she is fascinated and studies dragons ever since she was a little girl. And she is able to get a husband that also is interested in dragons and lets her do what she wants. He's still very, protective of her and would ideally love her to be more of a lady, but he appreciates her intelligence and her fascination with dragons and wanting to go on adventures and get her hands dirty and everything, but he also constantly worries about her. And they go on this, she finds out about this expedition and gets him to, befriend and go with the man who's running the expedition. And she's able to, after some persuading, and explain how she would just be so unhappy if she didn't get to go with him and experience this, go to this other place and see these dragons and how important it is to her. She's able to persuade him to take her along. And it's not like, it's kind of, her experience is kind of a mixture of enjoying it, being appreciative of it, but there are, this culture, she's in this village that they're staying at, and she's not 100% happy with these people because, there's lack of communication. They have these superstitious beliefs that she doesn't agree with. She's a woman of science, and they're not scientists, and it's just very... And it's not the most comfortable situation. Like, she's definitely roughing it. And even she has her limits. And she kind of they see her as nothing but trouble because she's willing to do whatever it takes to get what she wants. And it causes nothing but trouble and grief for her husband. But he loves her and he will do whatever makes her happy, while these people are like, the one woman that is hired to kind of be her maid is like, you're nothing but trouble, and you're bringing all this superstitious stuff down on us, and these people are just... She doesn't like her. So that's where I am right now. But what's really cool is that this book is written... It's a 4-book series. It is a series. And it's written like a nonfiction book. It's a memoir. So it's written, like it's fact. Like, explores the idea of what if dragons were real and were like just any other animal that you want to study and explore. And so the way it's written, it's like as if it's a real memoir, which I think is actually cool. Like, at the time I didn't love that, but like I said, now that I've taken the time to really get into the story and I'm able to appreciate it more. And I got, you definitely see the humor because she's very snarky. She's a very snarky person. And there is a little bit of ignorance when she comes to this other culture. And she's also, because she's looking back as an old lady and everything, looking back on her youth, it's one of those stories where she's commenting on herself and saying, forgive me, I was a teenager. I was a stupid immature teenager at the time. It has a feeling of that in the story as well. Which in a way, that's what a memoir is, like someone looking back on their life and in particular experiences that they had and commenting on it and being like, forgive me, I was stupid, I was impulsive, I was naive, I was young, and that kind of mentality. But I definitely like it a lot better than I did last time. And I think that's because I took the time to appreciate it. And I made progress. I was able to take my time with the story and made progress. And now I'm like really getting into it. In fact, I'm a little more than halfway done. And I will be ordering, I probably will by April I'll be ordering book 2 because I've not seen it at BAM and I know it's not at, Gibbons. So I'll be ordering on Thrift Books, and yeah, if I don't see it on Thrift Books, if it disappears, because with the used bookstore, if you don't get it right away, it's going to disappear. Other people are going to get to it first. So and I don't want to wait too long. And forgive me for not wanting to wait too long and going ahead and buying the next book so I can immediately read it and not waiting until like my birthday or Christmas to get the next one. And so I might be using Amazon. God forbid. Forgive me for using Amazon because I know a lot of people don't love Amazon. But anyways, I'm enjoying this. I think it's, if you like memoirs and you also like a little bit of fantasy, it has a fantasy element, obviously, because it's a story about a woman discovering dragons. And you like, and it also, I actually loves it when modern day authors do their own imitation of older literature, like a Dickens or a Jane Austen novel, that same writing style. I mean, that's one of the aspects of Susanna Clarke's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell that I really like. Like, a lot of people say because supposedly takes place during the Regency period, so people often compare it to Jane Austen. But I also feel like it's very Dickensian, that book. But anyways, I'm reading, so this is what I'm currently reading. I'm almost done with it. I'm also reading, I also started reading, because I know that reading Lord of the Rings is going to take me a long time to read, and I'm not going to get done. And I want to read at least more than one work from Tolkien before the end of the year, and that might take me more than over a year to read Lord of the Rings. So, or at least half a year, if anything. So I decided to go and pick one of his shorter works, and that is The Fall of Arthur. So it's his take on the Arthurian legend. Now, as I said, Tolkien was a perfectionist, so he didn't finish a lot of things. And when he died, his son Christopher took some of his works and allowed them to be published. And like I said, in this case, I think posthumously, again, I cannot say that word. Posthumously, I hope you guys know what I mean, what word I'm trying to say. That I think he would have been okay with his son publishing his works because he wanted to create this mythology, and I think he wanted to bring it to the world. He didn't like fame, but I think he did want people, he wanted to bring his work out into the real world. And he said this is his take on the Arthurian legend. And it actually doesn't start with Sword in the Stone. It starts after Arthur has been king, and Guinevere has hooked up with Lancelot, and Mordred has come into the picture, has come back, and the war has begun, and Lancelot is kind of like, all the characters are kind of dwelling on the aftermath of their situation, and like you have Arthur is kind of not in a great place right now. He's worried, and he knows he has to go to war and everything. You have Mordred, who is very triumphant, and Lancelot is concerned. He feels guilty, but he also loves Guinevere, and he's kind of caught between Arthur and Guinevere. That's the impression I got from his chapter. And then Tolkien did something a little different with Guinevere. She's not an innocent victim that, made a mistake. She's a little more vindictive and manipulative, and, and apparently she and Mordred had a little bit of something going on, or Mordred was attracted to her, or was lusting after her. So yeah, definitely a different take on Arthur, and I'm gonna read a little bit more probably after I eat some lunch. Of course, I also gotta work on my review for The Dead Zone by King, which brings me to my other book I'm currently reading, which is Christine by Tolkien. I mean, not by Tolkien. I mean, by Stephen King. I feel like, and no, I'm not. Just because you like these authors does not mean that you're gonna automatically love Stephen King. But if you don't already, or if you've never gotten into him, I do almost feel like the way Stephen King does with characters, and reminds me a little bit of Dickens. I mean, he doesn't, he almost exaggerates his characters. And then, like Tolkien, he creates his own mythology. I feel like his own, it's more realistic, and he didn't. And Stephen King obviously did not create his own language, but in a way, he built his own mythology, his own universe, which I feel like is a lot more common than people realize. There's a lot of authors that have gone that route of creating their own universe. And I used to think, oh, but if you stay in one type of world, then that's not good. You're not experimenting. You're not trying new things. But then I think sometimes, depending on how you do it, you can try a lot of new things. Yes, you're staying where you're familiar, and I do think eventually you got to spread your wings and explore other avenues. But exploring different worlds. I mean, like the way King does it, he does different types of stories and has different type of characters. I mean, there are certain things he uses a lot in his stories, like there's always a writer, and in this case, our narrator's mom is the writer. There's always, he's always exploring themes about religion and, friendship. And of course, he focuses on things that interest young men, because he's a guy himself. So it's what he knows, what he's familiar with. And Tabitha probably helps him with the female stuff if he needs help. But yeah, no, just because you love Charles Dickens does not mean you're gonna love Stephen King. But I do think there's aspects of Charles Dickens that he does do similarly, like he, diving deep into his creating characters, and really you get to know the characters, and maybe even there's a bit of exaggeration, particularly on the antagonistic characters, the ones that you just hate. And then also, there's, again, I feel like he created his own mythology, kind of like what Tolkien does. And I do feel like in his Dark Tower series, there is some Tolkien inspiration in there. But so this is about our narrator is Dennis, and in a way, Dennis and Arnie are the main characters. Arnie is his friend, and he's the one who claims Christine. He's this nerdy kid, isn't very popular. He's that kid who always gets beat up all the time because he's timid and seen as weak, and his face hasn't cleared up. He has all these marks all over his face, so people will make fun of him for that. And he's a lot more passive. And you already get the impression, in the first couple chapters that the mom and dad are very much, they coddle him, they baby him, they kind of control his life. And they expect, and I think especially the mom thinks Dennis should do the same, monitor her son, make sure he doesn't do anything bad. And which that's another thing, like King definitely has some interesting characters that are, meant to be kind of good guys, like on the side of good, but they are still more like morally questionable, or at least they're not saints. They're not perfect. There's no like black and white with this story. The good people have their bad moments, and the bad people have their glimmers of goodness, which that's how people are. I've done bad things. I've done things or said things that aren't always nice. Or at least not nice thoughts, because I can't vocalize mean things, to people. But yeah, I'm just saying, like I said, I mean, as in, no one's perfect. No one's good or bad. And so, no, I don't need anyone commenting me like, oh, I'm sure you're so nice on camera and you seem so sweet and everything. It's like, I'm not looking for that. I'm just saying that, we all have good and bad in us. And that's what King is good at, and I feel like really getting real characters, real people. Like, even if at the end of they're just fictional characters. And Arnie, did I say his name? His name's Arnie. And Arnie sees when him and Dennis are driving along, Dennis kind of takes care of him and protects him, or tries to. And while they're driving along, they drive past this house that has this beautiful car that Arnie immediately falls in love with, and like he immediately wants to buy it, even though his parents would not approve of him just buying this old beat up car. And already Dennis is aware he doesn't trust the guy who's trying to get him to, that is selling the car to him. He has a sleazy car dealership persona going on, and But Arnie just becomes obsessed with this car and is like, all of a sudden, like, Dennis, his opinion doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. And so, and he does eventually buy the car, and even though him and his parents even get in a fight about it, and he starts to slowly get obsessed with this car. And, you know, Dennis finds out that this car has a bit of a dark history. Like, that maybe this car has, you know, that has caused a lot of problems, a lot of grief for people, the people who owned it before. And it's actually funny because this is not a memoir, but this is a story that has a narrator who's looking back on his life, and he's an old man, or at least an adult by now, and he's looking back, kind of like what this book is doing, where the character's looking back on their life and now having hindsight and realize the mistakes that they made and wishing they could take things back and trying to understand where they went wrong and if they could have prevented the bad stuff that happens, which we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm guessing something really bad is going to happen with the car. And it's kind of interesting. Something that got my attention was that, well, first off, this place takes place in the 70s. And Grease just came out in the setting of the story. And so Dennis and his girlfriend, go to see Grease. And she loves it, thinks it's great. And everyone keeps telling, oh, the ending is the best part. And, like, he ends up leaving the theater because he's bored. He thinks this is stupid. He thinks this is unrealistic. And he gets up to call Arnie to check on him. And both the girl at the candy counter, and his girlfriend are like, oh, the ending's the best part. And I'm just thinking, I mean, it's a cute movie. I like it. I still have a soft spot for it. And I love, as much as any person loves musicals and teen bops and everything, but just like, I mean, yeah, the ending's good, but it's not like the best part ever. And so I thought that was kind of a funny moment. In fact, I actually like Grease 2 a little bit better. That's a little more entertaining for me. But I guess because I've heard so much, even before I eventually bought the movie, I heard so much about Grease. Grease has always, been a big deal for a lot of people, especially musical lovers, and it's like, yeah, it's good. It's entertaining. And also, I've been, Cinema Therapy did a video on it that was, like, critiquing the relationship between Danny and Sandy, the main couple. And they made some valid points about it. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny that they, because it was the time when Grease came out. But, I bring it up also because I was looking at reviews, and someone, I didn't let myself get spoiled. I was careful about that. But someone, there were a couple reviews that were just a sentence or two because they didn't like the book. But one of them was, first of all, two of them were fun. I thought were kind of amusing. One of them was like, no matter what, you can't convince me cars are boring. Like, they're like, I don't care. Cars are boring. I have no interest in reading about cars. Although I have to say, I'm not a car person either, but for me personally, King does a great job with his characters and really, doing more with something, even if something like seems like a silly, simple idea, he does so much with it, in my opinion. And I think there are, and I know that there are other people that agree, so I know I'm not alone in that opinion. But another review that I thought was funny was they mention, or not funny necessarily, but interesting how when describing the plot, well, not giving away, they say that Arnie slowly becomes like a greaser, like in Grease, like Danny and his gang. So I thought that was kind of a mix of interesting and kind of creepy to think about, And, it's clear from the back description, I think, that there's an obsession, a possession going on in the story. But yeah, I'm really liking it, and which I'm surprised by, but I'm enjoying it, and I like Dennis. But anyway, so that's what I'm currently reading right now. I intend to read a little bit of The Fall of Arthur after I eat lunch. Anyway, so as far as Shameless goes, like I said, I'm on season 7, and my parents are on season 10, and there's 11 seasons, so they're almost done. And part of me worries about, getting it like, if they're done, then I might not be motivated, because it's a very dark, serious show, like, and it's very gritty and takes place in the real world, so there isn't, like, an escapism to it. There's no magic to it. I mean, there is a little bit of humor. There is a different kind of escapism, and it's like, it's not my kind of life, and you just can't help but you be engaged and want to know what's going to happen with this family. You just, as soon as you get into it, you want to know, are these people going to get out of their mess, and will they stop being dumb? And you just can't help it. You have to keep watching. But it's also a show that's not a comfort show, and not one that I would watch multiple times. Like, I'm gonna finish it, and then I'm probably gonna be done, and maybe one day I'll watch the whole thing all over again. But if it's on on Netflix still. But yeah, it's an exhausting show. But it's also a funny show, and you just keep thinking, are these people gonna stop being dumb and get out of their mess? But then maybe they can't. I guess they can, because they're in a situation where this is the only thing that they know. They cannot help it. They don't see any other way out. You almost pity them. But it's an exhausting show. There are times when I want to stop, but I want to finish it. And I know my parents are almost done, and I just want to keep going so I don't lose momentum, even if they stop watching, even if they are done before I get a chance to finish it. But it's like, it was nice that we're watching it, and we're sort of watching it together, like, not together as in I'm in the room while we're watching it, because no, there's too many scenes that would make me uncomfortable watching it with them. So it's just easier for us to watch it separately and then talk about it after. But like I said, they're way ahead of me, because I just there was at one point where I just took a little bit of a break and watched other stuff, because that show is exhausting. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. So yeah, this is where these are the books I'm reading right now, and these are the books I'm reading right now, and as always, I would love to know what you're currently reading at the moment. Is there anything interesting? Are you reading anything that's inspired by, Ireland inspired, or like maybe even, Caesar, Julius Caesar inspired, because it is Ides of March month, and maybe you're reading books about Julius Caesar, or are you reading like Irish books, because it is, the month of Ireland, and of course, are you reading any Mammoths, because it is March of the Mammoths right now, and even though I kind of gave up on that, maybe you guys are reading something. Would love to know. I hope whatever you're reading, I hope you're enjoying it. I'm definitely enjoying my reading, and I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye.